instructional design was really, really interesting to me, and just kind of thinking about the science behind learning, and particularly adult learners, and how they come approach learning. Because when you're younger and you're in school and stuff like that, you're obviously, some people love to go to school, some people don't, but basically you're there because you have to be. But when you're an adult, you're seeking out knowledge, you're studying because you want to learn, and you're kind of coming at it with that kind of an approach. And it really is just so interesting to think about how to cater to that when you're putting together courses. And here at Cybrary, that's what we're thinking about all the time, is how can we take these complex concepts and deliver them to people in a way that, adults who really want to apply what they're learning right away. They want to get their hands on. They want to make sure that they know they're learning what they need to.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cybrary podcast. I'm Sara Faradji, a course manager here at Cybrary, joined by Jenn Barnabee, also a course manager here at Cybrary, and we are kicking off National Cybersecurity Awareness Month with this exciting podcast to discuss Jenn's new course, and it's on the Certified in Cyber exam from ISC Squared, which we're super excited about. And the course is so comprehensive and incredible. So I would love to get started. So let's just talk about, go back a bit, even before we start talking about the exam and the course, just learn a little bit more about you. What I think is interesting about the both of us is we don't come from a cybersecurity background. We come from very diverse backgrounds. Myself, I have a doctorate in English, so coming to a cybersecurity education platform at Cybrary, not the most logical pivot, some might say. And Jenn, tell us a bit about your background as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sara. Yeah, it's great to be here on the podcast with you again. And I love working with you as a course manager here at Cybrary. And yeah, it's really it was a weird career turn for me to come here as well. And I've got a varied background. I started out in the U.S. Air Force. I was a Russian linguist, of all things, there for many years. And then after I got out of the military, I worked for a risk management company where we did sort of open source intelligence in risk management, so not so much the way that you think about it in cybersecurity. And from there, I kind of moved into technical writing, because I did a lot of report writing and intelligence writing and things like that in my background, and then just took that writing into sort of a tech-adjacent way of doing technical writing and working with software developers and that type of thing. And then I moved into product management and product ownership. So still working with software developers and, seeing how software is built and used, and kind of writing about how to use it, and doing kind of training courses around that. So that kind of got me into training. And when I saw the opportunity here at Cybrary, I was really interested in getting into it, just because I realized, sort of we're all in this digital world. Cybersecurity is really everywhere in everything that we do, even though we aren't thinking about it. And it seemed like a natural fit, even though it kind of, stepping back and looking at it, it seems kind of like, well, that's weird. Why did she go into that? So, yeah, I really have enjoyed being here. And in our job, as you know, we get to work with some really super smart people, instructors who put our courses together, and we help them with that. And, how we benefit from that is really getting to hear these really intelligent people, explain different aspects of cybersecurity for people at all different levels. And certainly some of it goes over my head. I don't know about you, but some of it, after you hear it so many times, it becomes kind of second nature. And so, yeah, it's really been a great experience. And now I feel like, I'm still not an expert in the field, but I just know so much from being in this space all this time.
Wow. So we went all the way back, military, Russian linguist, and then coming into writing, technical writing, project management, and then this role, at Cybrary is so interesting with instructional design, other things. And tell us about also your education background in terms of how, again, with all of that experience, I'm interested in how, your experience and your education and how you pursued them either jointly or how that kind of fit in as well into your career development.
Yeah, cool. So I got my bachelor's a long time ago. I'm not a spring chicken or anything, but I got my bachelor's a long time ago when I was in the Air Force, used the GI Bill and everything, and kind of combined my Russian training with just a bachelor's degree in social sciences, but with a minor in Russian. And didn't really pursue a graduate degree back then just because I really didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. And then after kind of the progression that I described earlier, realized that instructional design was really, really interesting to me, and just kind of thinking about the science behind learning, and particularly adult learners, and how they come approach learning. Because when you're younger and you're in school and stuff like that, you're obviously, some people love to go to school, some people don't, but basically you're there because you have to be. But when you're an adult, you're seeking out knowledge, you're studying because you want to learn, and you're kind of coming at it with that kind of an approach. And it really is just so interesting to think about how to cater to that when you're putting together courses. And here at Cybrary, that's what we're thinking about all the time, is how can we take these complex concepts and deliver them to people in a way that, adults who really want to apply what they're learning right away. They want to get their hands on. They want to make sure that they know they're learning what they need to, and get that feedback and sort of that validation, because they want to go out and apply it on their, on the job. And so it makes it very immediate, very real, very urgent kind of in a way. And that's what's really exciting about being in this role and working, here at Cybrary and doing instructional design in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, I love how you broke down the interests and goals of the adult learner. Having been one as well as myself, I come from an academic background, and I'm teaching students at the University of Maryland, go Terps, in the university setting. And, it's fascinating thinking about their mindset, being younger, and thinking about how they want to consider a potential career. They might not know what it is yet, and they're trying to develop certain skills in writing, where I teach English. And then yourself, Jenn, also, being in this space where we're working with adult learners, seeing how they might already be in their career, or they have a specific career in mind, and they are taking certain courses online, self-paced, to get a certification or to get certain skills-based prep. And I find that, the mindset and the way that you teach and explain material to these particular audiences, whether in person, online, adult, or undergraduate, younger learner, I think that all of that is really compelling to think about, and how the whole in the instructional design field that you've been in, thinking about, why do we learn? How do we learn? What are the best? It's a psychology, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you, when you are working with instructors and trying to think about how do we best present this technical material so it doesn't go over people's heads, or it isn't boring to
Mm-hmm.
read or to
Yeah.
listen to. Do you have any strategies or thoughts on kind of, how do you work with instructors, and what are some best practices for kind of teaching to adult learners?
Yeah. And I forgot to really answer part of your last question, and that is that I'm pursuing a master's degree now. I'm just about to finish it up in learning design and technology, because I kind of realized this was something I was so interested in. And, again, to reinforce, hey, you can always go back to school. So anybody who's out there that's, maybe not so young, but thinking about it, definitely you can learn on Cybrary, you can go back to college. But yeah, I think one of the things that we have been trying to apply and help our instructors kind of see, because they're all practitioners, they've done this stuff on the job, and just because they know their topics really, really well doesn't mean they necessarily are naturals at explaining it to someone else. So in a way, I think you and I bring that outsider view, and we can kind of say, okay, I know I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I think you could break this down a little bit more or something. And I think the other thing that we try to do is we try to, suggest that, you to include stories, to include real examples from, real life, to try to use analogies, to try and kind of break things down so people can really relate to what they're learning, and make it interesting. And because these are practitioners, they have those stories. They have those really interesting problems they've had to solve. They can kind of bring in those things that they learned the hard way, and when they tell those stories, I think it really sticks with learners, and people are like, oh yeah, I remember that, this instructor said this or that, and from working with Kelly Handerhan, who's one of, our favorite instructors on the platform, that's one of the great things that she brings to her courses is just telling things in a way that's just really down to earth and kind of using funny examples, really, that people are going to remember. And that's always really stuck with me since I started here was, when you're kind of teaching something that may be a little dry or maybe really kind of complex, it's really good if you can break it down and tie it to things that people can relate to.
Yes, absolutely. Kelly Handerhan will never forget the curb roasting, carousel carnival, as well as pizza as a service. Think of Kelly as a service when you're thinking about, sauce pass, all of those things that clouds are. It's always, really compelling. And I remember there's an instructor I worked with, Clint Kerr. We were doing our OWASP series, and he had this example. He always loved to include real world examples and scenarios and ripped from the headlines types of things to relate this information about a particular vulnerability, a web application vulnerability. And there was one that I will never forget, thinking about how threat actors can potentially hack into airplane Wi-Fi and stuff, and it's called an IDOR vulnerability. And I remember the images and the graphics and the way that he described it. Imagine that you're on a plane and then all of these things happening, and it does really stick with you. And like you said, even someone, again, I'm not of a particular cybersecurity background, but it's great to learn some of these things and see about how to apply it. And that's why I think some of these courses are really valuable, even if you're not doing the pen testing or something. These stories and such, they not only help people be able to apply that and think about it in the real world, but even if you want a different type of job role in management or compliance, and you need to understand these concepts, there's a space for everyone in cybersecurity. See yourself in cyber is kind of the theme of this month, National Cybersecurity Awareness. So
I mean, that's great. I mean, that's one of the things also that we've had the benefit of working here is just realizing that there are so many different avenues you can go down. You can go into cyber threat intelligence. You can do, auditing and compliance and governance and stuff like that. Or, you can do the red teaming and the blue teaming, but there's just different parts of it that you can do too. And forensics, there's different things that you can get into and find something that you really thrive, as you learn. And I think that's been really interesting, something I didn't know before I came here.
Absolutely. I know that we've learned it, with our partnership with MITRE, Ingenuity. You've done some podcasts that were excellent, where you talked to so many people of different backgrounds and seeing how they saw themselves in cyber and how they found a way in. And we really think about how cybersecurity, it's not just a technical a field. It's one where everybody at your organization or whatnot needs to have some cybersecurity awareness. I know that I think you have been taking one of our weekly challenges that was on phishing and being able, it would be great to think about the application of those at different organizations. We should all be able to understand social engineering and phishing. I know some of you listening might have also, maybe in your work training or things, have some kind of modules or something that are in training. I know at University of Maryland we do. For example, there's all kinds of videos and things that are explaining that. And so we really see kind of the reach. There's so many levels and interesting parts that we can break down and understand together.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think that's, I love that theme this month, see yourself in cyber. And, another thing that I kind of bring from my background is I used to be an endurance athlete and I did triathlons. And one of the things I loved about the triathlon sport was that it's three sports, basically, swimming, biking, and running. And when you get together with other triathletes, everybody has a weak point. Everybody's like, oh, my swim is terrible, or, I'm not that good on the run or whatever. And it makes everyone it lowers the barrier to entry in a way, because everybody can kind of come in and commiserate together and like learn things from each other. And I feel like cybersecurity is kind of that way too. I feel like it can be intimidating on the surface, but when you get into it, everybody wants to help everybody out. Everybody has the same goal of protecting the network and protecting the organization and stuff like that. And so it can be a really great community to be in. And, of course, Cybrary has the Discord channel and the community there, and everybody wants to help everybody out. We have great mentors. So I think that's a really interesting way of seeing how you can get into it. You just need to be curious. You need to be brave to try it out and not have sort of an imposter syndrome, concern about it, because everybody started somewhere and everybody didn't know everything immediately. They had to kind of learn as they went. And, and then you just have to be curious, really, and ask questions.
I love that. Be curious. I know that it is incredible to think about. I love the example you provided of the triathlon, thinking about, you might feel like, oh, I don't see myself here, or I can't do this or something. But just being open-minded, I think you're correct, is such an important part of thinking about, how you can open your horizons and get into a field that you never expected. I know, for example, there's so many instructors that we work with here at Cybrary. Raymond Evans, who's made a lot of our CBE series courses, he had a theater background largely. And I think Matt Mullins, who's made quite a few of our threat actor campaigns, I think his background was in, Asian studies or history or something like the humanities. And then and there are people that we meet here at Cybrary too, who come from all different types of backgrounds. And I love this kind of hodgepodge of people from we're very inclusive and accepting in this world, which I find really valuable. And what I think some people might not realize, some people might think, oh, it's anyone who loves math and science and tech and all these, and they're the only ones that are in that field. And so I love seeing how, being at Cybrary, for example, has really opened doors. Here, I know that people come from, again, all different education. They take a chance. They took a chance on me, someone with an only academic background, coming into this kind of world. So I think that is rewarding. And you mentioned the Discord community, which is also incredible to see. Again, everyone. It's like a gamer community almost, for cyber and learning. And so I find that interesting. You use a tool that, is typically for kind of gamer hangouts, that is for learning and trying out weekly challenges and all of these kinds of things. So, just making learning fun and engaging and meeting new people, networking, all through largely online spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you brought up the gaming part of it too, because I'm not a gamer, totally not a gamer, but just I can imagine how, that type of a person who enjoys that type of thing, it's perfect because you're willing to try things. You want to try something and learn from it. And, that's what learning is all about, that you're going to fail sometimes. And that's sometimes the best lessons you learn are when you fail. And when you're playing a game, you feel free to try things without much harm, right? That you can just do it again and try again. And that's a lot of what I think you learn with cybersecurity is you've got to ask questions. You got to see what other people have done, find out what works for you. But be curious and be willing to try stuff. So I think that's also kind of along the same lines.
I love that mindset. I remember taking a theater class, and that was the kind of mantra, don't be afraid to fail. Think like you're in a video game. In the video game, if you fail, you just try again. It's not, sometimes it can be frustrating, but at the same time, you just keep going, and it's low stakes. It's a video game, but I think when we fail in cybersecurity, we learn from it, we adapt, we grow at the same time, and I think that is really valuable to think about. So I want to pivot a little bit to thinking more about the course manager role again, and I know you've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love for you to touch more on what have you learned from working with cybersecurity instructors, especially again coming from you're not neither of us are specialists in certain fields of cybersecurity, like red team, blue team, things like that. But what are some things that you've learned that have really stood out to you from the experience of working with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's various different themes and things that I've taken away from it. And, I know we're going to talk about the entry-level cybersecurity training in a minute, but kind of going into that when I wanted to teach that course, some things that we've heard over and over again that kind of come up in a lot of different courses, whether it's cloud security, we'll hear it, or the CISSP course that Kelly did, and different things like that. We hear about the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We hear about the principle of least privilege. We hear about defense in depth. So there's these concepts that we've heard over and over again in different contexts, but all kind of talking about the same things. And it just really makes you see how important those ideas are. And also, the other thing that I've learned is we talk a lot about the red team versus the blue team, and sort of like the defenders and the people that are exploiting systems and stuff like that. But, when I first came here, I didn't realize how everybody's on the same team. Like everybody's really on the same team, and the red teamers are really like, I think Matt Mullen said it best, they're like the sparring partners for the blue teamers. They're the ones that are getting that prize fighter ready for the big, fight or whatever. And I've, really come to appreciate that and sort of see how, those different aspects of cybersecurity have to work together. You can't get complacent. You can't let your guard down. You have to always have that red teamer who's thinking of different ways to get in and take advantage of things, so that then your blue team can be ready to defend your network. And there's always going to be new threats, And another thing that we've learned, like I never would read up on all different kinds of attacks that are happening, and breaches, and ransomware cases and things like that. And now I do, because it's just like, oh, I know about that. I know a little bit about that. I'm going to read about that. And that's what's been great about working with our instructors, as they'll bring in new CVEs, as you mentioned, anything that pops up that's new, and they'll discuss it, and we'll kind of get an idea of, okay, this one's really a serious one, like the Log4j vulnerability. Other things, maybe they are very niche and wouldn't really affect the broader, I keep hitting my microphone, the broader, group of people that we might encounter, with our learners. So we have to kind of be selective on the things that we cover for our Cybrary learners. But, I never would have known about any of that stuff before I came here. So it's been really, really great to learn that. And there's a lingo, there's so much terminology, and there's a lingo and things that you have to get past to sort of understand what everybody's talking about. What is a TTP? What is a, what is a compromise or indicator of compromise, things like that, once you kind of know that terminology, and you can converse with your instructors about things like that, it's really pretty cool, actually. And I know that when you look at our catalog, it seems like people really want to come in and they want to take the penetration, advanced penetration testing courses and things like that. And those are the really exciting things. And I understand why that is, like I think even blue teamers want to know enough about what red teamers do, so they can, kind of know how to exploit things and stuff like that. But there's just so much else out there too, to learn about. And so I think it's just been interesting to kind of explore all the different categories of information out there that pertain to cybersecurity.
Yeah. And I know, thinking about red team, blue team, and such, you've also been working with MITRE Engineering on purple teaming recently. That's a new course. And you tell us about how that partnership, working with them, and then thinking about the innovation of the purple teaming, and also how it kind of relates to some things that we're doing here at Cybrary with red team, blue team.
Yeah, exactly. So they have a new course for purple teaming fundamentals, that I worked with them on. MITRE is great. They have MITRE Ingenuity has some excellent instructors, really know what they're doing, and they just really live it. Whenever we got together to do the videos for that course, those guys were so into it. They could just talk about it all day long, and they really, you could just tell that they really wanted to convey the lessons learned that they've had. That you can't go into a purple teaming operation, which is one where the red team and the blue team kind of plan together to test the defenses of the network. And so everybody kind of knows what's going to be tested in a way. Like they need to be able to get, really good at detecting a certain TTP, tactics, technique, and procedure that an adversary might use. They, might focus on something that's really a threat to that particular organization or something like that, or they know what their adversaries are trying to do, so they want to focus on that. But it's all a collaboration. They talk about it ahead of time. Everybody kind of knows what to expect, but then how the blue team detects it, is kind of up to the blue team. How the red team is going to exploit it or attack is up to them. But they kind of learn from each other in the whole process. And, maybe in the purple teaming event, they go down one route to test a certain TTP, and the red team might be like, okay, now I'm going to do something evasive and try it a different way and see how the blue team reacts. But then they help each other, and so it's really interesting to see how they do that, and to see how much effort they put into that kind of an operation, really, because I know from my military background, we would have exercises, and the military does that quite a bit. And you have big exercises, and you act like you're at war. You go through all of the different activities that you would do. You have to act like, you've got to cover your windows so nobody sees your lights at night and doesn't know there's a facility there, and all different things. And a lot goes into something like that, and there's a lot of downtime, time that you're not doing your actual job, you're doing this exercise. And so I think the same thing is true with like a purple teaming event, that, these are people who are vital to keep the organization safe, but they're taking the time out to do this purple team event so that they can get better at what they do. And I think that kind of speaks to how important it is.
Yes. And I love, you spoke to the idea of, we're all one team. There are all these different teams: red team, blue team, purple team, white team, all these things. But at the same time, everyone's working to help each other. And the way that you improve your cybersecurity posture is to keep doing these types of exercises and events and learning from them, producing the lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that like, so I think that, and like you said, it's fascinating how through working with the instructors, it's a mutual education in some ways, because you're teaching them instructional design principles and how to make this type of activity engaging. At the same time, you're learning all this information about how these different teams work together and what their roles are, and you're able to communicate it so well. So I feel like it's great being in the course manager role. I don't know if you want to speak more to that about, the mutually beneficial type of relationships that we foster.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it always helps a subject matter expert or an instructor to have that outsider there to kind of say, I know what you're trying to convey, but it'd be better to maybe do it this way or something like that. Or, just kind of come along and make suggestions, about the best things to add to a course or whatever. But really, our instructors are so great. I mean, they're really just the stars of the show, honestly. So we don't have too much to do all the time, but some instructors, they just come in and they're just naturals with everything. And like I said, some instructors are so such specialists in their field, but just maybe haven't done any teaching, so I think, and that's where you help, I think, a lot with a lot of the instructors, is you have that academic background that you can really help them out. And another thing that I love that you do is you're like always looking for ways to take something off of their, the burden off of the instructor, so they can really focus on the information they're trying to convey. So you're helping with getting images and, providing, helping with the slides, putting the slides together, all these different things. And then obviously with the production, with the video production, giving a lot of tips on, making sure it sounds good, making sure it looks good, all of those things that go into our courses that are kind of behind the scenes that learners probably don't realize are going on, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it's teamwork, all of
Yeah,
it. We
definitely.
really, what can I do? What can you do? How can we meet in the middle and support one another? It's a really supportive environment and relationship, which I appreciate. And I think, like we said, we're both learning in the process, and it's great to see the instructors growing in this kind of
Yeah.
role because some of them are instructors. Some of them have a lot of training experience and they've taught in front of people at boot camps and the like, but some are just starting, they are wanting to broaden their career. They've been in technical roles and they've been hands on keyboard and they're wanting to expand their skill sets and think about how do I start teaching and being an instructor and move into this kind of space a little bit. And so being able to work with them and help kind of train them while they teach us, it's a rewarding experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I want to kind of pivot now to talk about the exam and the course that you have produced, which is fantastic. So, how did you hear about the Certified in Cybersecurity exam from ISC Squared?
Yeah. So, here at Cybrary, we have to kind of stay up to date on the different certifications that are out there. And, I had already sort of subscribed to different ISACA, ISC squared, all these different organizations to kind of get their emails and learn about what they have coming out and when they're updating their exams and all this so that we can just be in the know and make sure that our curriculum and all of our courses and our catalog are up to date. And so I just happened to get one of the first emails from ISC Squared about this new certification. And at the time, they were calling it Entry-Level Cybersecurity Certification or something like that. ELCC, I think it was. And it was going to be just a pilot program. They wanted to try out this new exam and provide, what they're doing is they're providing an entry-level certification that allows people with no experience and no, cybersecurity degree or anything like that to come in and learn the basics of cybersecurity and then take this exam to show that they have that minimal level of knowledge, which is a great starting point, I think, because if you wanted to go straight to something like CISSP or something like that, you're required to have 5 years of experience for that. So, nobody wants to wait that long really to kind of prove what they know. And there are definitely other certifications you can go after. But the great thing about this one is you can, just learn the basics and then have something to show for it. And eventually, with the pilot, they decided to rename the certification, and now it's called Certified in Cybersecurity. So that's the name now. So anyway, when I heard about this coming out, the first thing I thought was, oh, well, Cybrary is going to need a course that covers this this certification because that was my main focus. But then the other thing I was thinking was, well, I've been around here for a little while and I've heard a lot of this stuff that they say they're going to cover on the exam. Maybe I should think about taking it, because I know a little bit now. And so that was what I was thinking was, oh, I'll take this pilot exam and see what it's like. And so I did that. What I did first, though, is we didn't have a course for it yet. So I took ISC Squared's course. They had like a weekend, almost like a boot camp for it. So it was like 2 days online, but it wasn't completely asynchronous. There was an instructor and a class, sorry. And so that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that class and took that. And then I signed up for the exam. And as I said, it was a pilot exam at the time. So what that means is the organization is trying out the exam and they want to run it for a certain amount of time and see what the results are to kind of validate whether it's a good exam and everything before they kind of call it official. So now it's official. So it took a while to get my results. I actually didn't know until just like a couple of months ago, I think now, that I passed. So that was really exciting. But in the meantime, I enjoyed it so much. I felt like the information was really, really good. And so I approached our boss to see if I could put together a course on what was, basically the content of the exam. And we call our course Entry-Level Cybersecurity Training. So that's the course on Cybrary, but it does align pretty closely to the Certified in Cybersecurity exam. So if you want to prepare for that exam, you should check it out. And it was so much fun to make it. I still want to make it even better, but it was fun to make what I did put together. It's about a 3-hour course, I want to say 3 to 4 hours, and 6 modules. And what it does for you, if you're new to cybersecurity and you're thinking about getting into it and you don't know where to start and you don't have any experience or anything, it really just breaks down all the terminology and all the basic concepts for you. So we talk about the CIA triad. We talk about networking. We talk about some network models like the OSI model. We talk about a little bit at a high level, we talk about encryption and cryptography, incident response, security operations, all these basic concepts that you need to know in cybersecurity. And so it's not going to, teach you how to be a red teamer. It's not going to, get you, right into a job necessarily, but it's going to give you a first step. And then when you move on to other things that are more complicated, maybe on the Cybrary platform, maybe you're going to then go on to try and do the Security Plus certification or the Network Plus, or maybe you're going to try to get into cyber threat intelligence or something like that. Like whatever interests you, you're already going to understand the lingo basically, and you're going to have heard some of these concepts again, so that you will be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Now let me learn the next thing, now let me learn the more complicated stuff. So it kind of gets some of that stuff out of the way for you, and you're going to just have it ingrained in you by the time you get, further along, because you will have heard it enough times and things like that. So I really love it. It was fun to put together. I think people will get something out of it. We here at Cybrary, a lot of people are taking the course, which is really exciting, especially this month for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. People are taking it, and I'm hearing, great feedback from people. And I think it's great for like our customer experience people or anybody else who works with the Cybrary community, because they're kind of studying some of the same topics that our learners are studying and things like that. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think it's the perfect exam. So many people we hear are thinking, I want to have a career shift. I want to think about cybersecurity, but I don't know where to start. And I think that this exam is a good way when you're preparing for it and you get all that terminology. Like you said, you're introduced to it, and it's a way to actually get a certification with the entry level, knowing the basics, knowing who does what, and what are all the different, different types of systems, without getting into the technical, into the hands-on keyboard things. Quite, and there's technical theory and kind of all of that, but at the same time, it's, it's accessible to people, and I think that is really great. This is when you get this certification, when you're preparing, you get a better sense of whether you'd like it. And then you can start getting the experience if you'd like. I mean, there are different ways to kind of explore and use this exam to prepare. So building upon that, I'm interested in, we've talked a lot in the podcast about your kind of managing the content in some way as the course manager and working with the instructors. How was that shift for you from kind of being the manager of the instructor and the content and working with the instructor to actually being the content creator yourself?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was a little eye-opening, because it's hard to be the instructor. And it gave me a lot more empathy for, the subject matter experts we work with and the people that are putting the content together, because, it's a lot to take on to try and make sure that you're covering all the information and to make sure that you're really highlighting the most important things and that you're putting it together in a creative way, and, you're keeping it interesting. And then it's also just a little bit of a marathon, kind of going back to my endurance sport thing, like you've got to get through all of the content, put it together in a timely manner. You don't want people thinking, oh, she's never going to get this course done. So I really appreciate that from that experience, and just kind of knowing what our instructors are up against, because I was still doing my regular part of my job for Cybrary, and you've got to juggle things. Everybody has a life. They're out there, and a lot of our instructors, they're doing this part-time. This is not their main gig. So how do they fit that in and make sure that they do it kind of in a timely way, and make sure that they're not leaving, important things out, and that they don't jump ahead and sort of talk about something they haven't covered yet, and things like that. So it just made me appreciate that, the importance of planning the course out, and making sure that you're really hitting all the objectives of the course, making sure that, you have some sort of knowledge checks in there so the learner can check that they're learning things and kind of reinforce that, the ideas that they need to walk away with. I tried to be really conscious of what is in the exam, what the exam seems to cover, like we'll talk about the exam, I'm sure, in a minute, but, it's an adaptive exam. So obviously everybody's set of questions that they get on the exam is going to be slightly different. But you want to make sure that you've got the right concentration of information in the course, and that you cover all of the really important things, and you make sure that you highlight, the sort of the hangups, the gotchas, the things that people get tripped up on. So people know, how to really, like for multi-factor authentication is one that comes to mind. You want to make sure that you really understand the different types of the different factors, like something, something you are, something you have, and that you don't, sort of mess that up and kind of confuse those and things like that. Just those types of things you want to convey in that type of a course. But also I wanted to make it interesting for just like a salesperson who needs to know a little bit about cybersecurity, or customer service people, or things like that. I wanted to keep it engaging and make sure that it is something that's relatable. And so I think that's also, something that I appreciate now whenever I talk to our SMEs and our instructors is, how to highlight that for them, because they're so down into the content, and, just to kind of take a step back and look at it from fresh eyes and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really a learning experience.
Yes, you have to wear a lot of hats as a content creator,
Yeah.
as many content creators know. And it is incredible to think about how you were working with the instructors and learning from their experiences, and also thinking about your own time management for your own course and how to plan it. And also, I like that you are considering the audience, the intended audience, who would be taking it, and how, kind of content do we choose to put in it? Is it video? Is it a written lesson? What kind of story can we tell? Can we make some kind of mnemonic device? I'd love to hear, what was your favorite kind of example from the course, or a way that you presented a certain material?
Yeah. No, that's funny. I tried to come up with some, fun and interesting things. It's not always easy with some of the content, but I guess probably the fun one that comes to mind, because somebody mentioned it to me the other day, is for the CIA triad. I kind of give a couple of different examples of how it comes up in our day-to-day lives when you're doing online shopping and different things like that. You want, your information to stay confidential and protected. You want to make sure that things don't, files don't get altered and data isn't altered. And, you don't want anybody to log into your bank account and, mess with your funds and stuff like that. But also, and then obviously availability, you want services and websites and things like that to be available. But I liked my bathroom analogy of, just a way to remember the different parts of the CIA triad is that, you want everything in the bathroom to be confidential. You don't want the door to be open or anything like that. And you want to make sure the plumbing works. So you want that to be intact, and you want the integrity of the plumbing to be there. And then, of course, you want the bathroom to be available to you when you need it. So somebody thought that was really a good way to remember those three things. I hope that is helpful to people who take the course too.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I love the images and the way that you break things down. I think you started every video in the course with kind of a scenario, and how do we imagine this, a bigger picture type of thing. I remember plane imagery, all kinds of things. It's like, okay, now I understand what it is a little bit before I even dive into the content. I can kind of get a bigger picture, and I really appreciate that, the anecdotes and the stories, as we've been talking about. And I'd love to hear, thinking of competitor analysis. You said you took the boot camp and things. I say, how was the training? How is that type of style of educating and learning about the material for this exam different from your course?
Yeah. So, this is kind of a good thing to bring up, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I know we're at Cybrary, we're kind of talking about doing some more interactive things, maybe some live events, different things like that. And I did really enjoy the fact that the ISC squared training that I took was with a real instructor, people, other classmates on the, sort of the call. It was kind of like a Zoom call type of a class. And I think that that is really engaging, and I'm glad that we're going to start doing, more of that type of thing here at Cybrary. I think what's great about the Cybrary courses, though, is you can do them at your own pace. You can, fit something in on your lunch hour. You can do it for 10 minutes before you come into work, or you go to work or start your work day, and things like that. So there's a place for both of those things. But I think that the sort of the community idea, the idea that you have other people engaging in the conversation about what you're learning can really be helpful. And that's where I think like the Discord community can really come into play. So I'm excited about the idea that, Cybrary is trying to move more and more to that, where they want to integrate all of those things and have the capability of somebody else. You're in a course, you can connect with somebody else who's in the same course and go, hey, what did you think about this? Or do you have any ideas on how to remember the OSI model? Or, I don't really understand what PKI is, and things like that. Like, it's really another element to learning that I think we need to have more of, and I think it can be really helpful. And that was one aspect of that training that I really appreciated, was just having people chime in and say, at my organization, this came up, and that's related to this thing that we're learning, and just, learning about other things, that other people's experiences can just kind of help you remember stuff and relate it to the real world in a way. So I think that's one thing that I would say is really good.
Yeah. I think that this is really to think about, like you said, there's so many different ways that people like to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it so many times, even going back to, I know that this model has been challenged. It's kind of fun, but, are you a visual learner? Do you prefer listening to things like on a playlist to absorb the information? Do you like being, even in a virtual room, like actually being able to talk with someone? But yeah, I mean, also with the community, like you said, even with on-demand courses where you can learn at your own pace, you can set and manage your schedule, set your goals, and then have all of the information with you all the time, and can always go back to it and brush up on certain things, bookmark parts that you didn't understand. But at the same time, like you said, the Discord community, I mean, I know a lot of people love learning about cybersecurity. They go to YouTube, they go to Reddit, they go to other places and try to share with
Mm-hmm.
people, in Discord as well is a good place. So I think that it's really important we're always thinking about, how are people engaging and
Mm-hmm.
learning, and how is that changing?
Mm-hmm.
Not even since 2020, but before that, how are people in this space continuing to learn and grow in ways that kind of challenge the traditional models? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think another thing that I would say for the listeners and, anybody who's trying to get into cybersecurity is I also, like Googled a lot of stuff. Like I took the course, but then, I wrote down notes and everything, and then I would go back over it. And because I was thinking about maybe putting a course together too, I wanted to see, well, can I really explain this? Like, do I really understand this well enough to explain it to somebody else? And so I did a lot of Googling and finding things on the internet and stuff like that. And you have to be careful. I found, and you'll probably find this too, like you Google one thing and you find like 3 different descriptions of it, and they kind of clash with each other. And you have to be very, you have to use some critical thinking and kind of come up with, okay, out of these 5 different things I read, 3 of them say this. So that's probably like more, the right answer of what I'm looking for and stuff like that. So you have to be careful about those things. But I think going back to being curious, I think you really need to do that. And I think to really learn this stuff, cybersecurity or, really anything, but you have to want to internalize it, and so what'll happen is you'll take whatever course, our course on Cybrary or anywhere, and then you'll still want to go read up on it. You'll want to go apply things. You'll want to go see how you can understand, like if you read about a breach or some kind of a cybersecurity attack, read up on it and try to understand it and think, okay, what kind of an attack is this? Do I understand what the adversary did in this situation? How did they get in? What was the vulnerability and things like that? You have to be curious enough to try and figure those things out. And maybe you won't understand it all, but the more you do that, you're going to pick up more and more things. And some things are just going to become second nature. And I think that's part of what my experience was with this, was I was hearing a lot of things from our SMEs and working with people on courses. So I knew a little bit, and then I studied a little bit more, and then more of it became second nature. And then, I knew enough to put this course together, but I still don't know everything. And I still see things in the news and stuff. And I'm like, I wonder how that worked, and just trying to figure it out, So I think you have to be willing to do that as
Yeah, I know.
well.
Yeah, I know we always say that in cybersecurity, it's a lifelong career in education in some ways because
Yeah.
you're always learning. It's never like, okay, I've gotten my education and then I've moved on. Like now I'm ready to work. It's that you're always in the cybersecurity role. You're always, looking up things and using that critical thinking. Don't just use one source that is your source of truth. You
Yeah.
have to kind of keep exploring and thinking about, how do you assess what is the best way that this information is formatted or presented in order for me to understand it. And so it's dynamic, it can be fun and all of these things. So I like how you've described this experience of thinking of building this course and the challenges as well as the rewards of making it. And I'd love to hear more of your thoughts as well about for those who are wanting to prepare for this exam,
Mhm.
the certified in cybersecurity exam from ISC Squared, what should people expect when they take the exam as well as in the preparation? I know you've mentioned some ways that you prepare, but even on exam day, if
Mhm.
someone who's wanting to pursue this, maybe they've never taken a certification exam before, what
Mhm.
are some things to keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, this particular exam is still only offered in person. So there are other certification exams out there that you can actually take online. I think with the pandemic, they made that available, that possible for people. Although I've heard it's also can be very stressful because they want to have you scan your whole room with the camera and prove that you aren't cheating in any way and all kinds of, and somebody's watching you the whole time you take the exam. So I don't know which way I'd rather do it, but this one you have to go in person to a Pearson VUE center to take the exam. And it's a 2-hour time limit for 100 questions. But it's adaptive, as I mentioned earlier. So what that means is when you take the exam, it's going to sort of adapt as you answer the questions. And it also means that you can't go back to any of the previous questions. So when you do answer them, you have to be confident and move on. And so you've got to answer and move on, and just kind of keep track of how much time you're taking because you don't want to run out of time. In my experience, what was interesting is I hadn't done that type of thing before, and it seemed like the exam was over before I knew it. It was really weird. It was really fast, and when it was over, I was like, maybe I rushed through it too much. I went too fast. So I think I was concerned about running out of time, and then I didn't at all run out of time. So I think everybody's experience there is going to be a little bit different, but that's because it's adaptive, like I said, and it's going to just kind of move with you along in the course. In the exam, rather. This exam, I don't think you really had any need for sort of paper and pencil. I have taken other project management exams and stuff like that where you can sort of sketch things out if you need to sort them out. But this one wasn't that complex. And yeah, it's a little bit, like I said, this one took a while to get my results. It was they said it would be, I originally understood it to be 8 weeks from the date that I tested, but that was incorrect. In this case, because it was a pilot, it was 8 weeks from the end of the pilot. And then they kind of kept extending how long the pilot was going to go for. So that's why it took literally months to find out if I passed this. But I think now that the pilot is over, it would just be up to 8 weeks from the time you take the exam, I believe. Maybe not quite that long. In fact, I believe once they have it completely, official, they might even give you your results right then when you take the test. So I might speak under correction there. So you could get your results right away, which is nice because you're so kind of stressed out over the test, and then you can find out one way or the other whether you need to take it again. And I think usually the fee for taking the exam includes one retest, typically. So you can check that out, but that's, kind of good to know that, hey, if I bomb the test or whatever, or I don't quite pass, I'll have a chance to take it again. So that's kind of keeps you motivated. So, and I also recommend, don't put your test off. If you do take the course or study up or do a boot camp or anything like that, set the date when you want to take the test so that you'll keep reviewing the information, reviewing your notes, and you don't sort of like forget everything by the time you take the test.
Yeah,
So.
incredible advice here. And it's really good to think about how, the retake, that's important, to be able to know that, we were just talking about not being afraid to fail and things
Yeah.
like that. And I think that this is a good entry level, certification that people can get engaged with the course. Other resources, like you said, really help. Also, getting into that kind of testing mindset. You have to plan and make sure that you're studying and setting your goals so many times for a certain amount of time each day, or however you plan it. That self-paced learning and preparation, and being a part of that pilot. It sounds, there was a waiting game a bit, but rewarding in the end to experience it, and then think about how it's so different, that adaptive testing from the traditional standardized testing. When I've been using, you get a certain number of questions, and you're filling in the bubbles. This is a different type of experience. So. Are there any kind of final thoughts or advice that you have for our listeners?
Yeah. I'm just thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's so great to be here. And I remember the first time I got to be on the Cybrary podcast here at Cybrary, which has been fun. We have a fun culture here. And I think that I would just say, my biggest advice is to be brave and to be curious and to open up, the possibilities for yourself. Don't be afraid to fail. And know that there's a community out there that, genuinely people who are in cybersecurity typically want to help each other out. And people will tell you what they did and how they got where they are. And they'll be happy to talk about it usually. It's kind of like, again, it reminds me of triathlon. If you found other people who were triathletes that you couldn't shut them up, they just wanted to tell you all about, oh, I went out for a bike ride and I got a flat tire and this is what I did and, whatever. And so I think in cybersecurity, it's similar where people want to tell you, hey, this is the mistakes I made. Don't do what I did. Go do this other thing or whatever, So I think that's really great. And I think everybody should see themselves in cyber and to some degree, because we're all out there using computers and devices all the time. So whether we like it or not, it's a cybersecurity world out there. And it doesn't hurt you at all to learn more about it, even if you don't become, sort of a red teamer or blue teamer or anything like that. But you just need to apply good cybersecurity every day in your life. So,
yeah, lovely advice for the audience. The examples you provide throughout the course and in this podcast, I think they're, a wonderful way for people to get engaged. We're ending on such a positive note. And I want to thank all of our listeners on all different platforms, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, Sounder, all the great platforms. Appreciate you for listening and watching the Cybrary podcast. Thank you so much, Jenn, for joining us. I hope everyone enjoys taking a look at your course and learning a lot about cybersecurity concepts. It's a great one. So thanks for your time. Bye, everybody.